Welcome everyone to build 52. This is only the second Spectre 3 build log that I'm putting on the channel, but I've definitely built a lot of them by now. I'm just starting the 3090 FE water block install, and these installs are definitely not getting any easier. Actually, it's not the water block install, that's part of it has pretty much remained the same over the years. It's the removal of the stock cooler. The Titans were starting to get pretty difficult, but this one just outdoes them all. You can see that I had to remove the little plastic covers over the screws with tape, and it's not that it's difficult, it's just time consuming. So we're just carefully removing the wire and the ribbon from the back of the PCB here. You need to be really careful not to pull up on these because it just rips the connectors straight off the PCB. Reminds me of my old laptop repair days back in the very early days when I first started SingularityComputers many years ago. I used to repair a lot of laptops because, particularly in my area, it's very hot, and laptops often have a lot of overheating problems, but it's also very humid, and so the dust would get in, the humidity would get into the dust and then start shorting things out. And then combined with the storms during the wet season here, there's a lot of lightning storms, so a lot of power supply problems and just things that are burned out. So I've repaired a lot of laptops in my time. Definitely excited to be installing this incredible EK water block. They just get better and better. This is just a massive thick lump of copper. Absolutely no holding back on cost here. Just that piece of copper would be incredibly expensive, and the CNC machining, the plating, very cool looking, extremely heavy. I would guess like upwards of 1.5 kilos. I just love how short and compact all of this is and how powerful it is, for its size. And then you have this little block on the end, which is interchangeable for another block with different port locations. I actually change it out later in the build. So that is step one completed, which is really just doing all of the assembly that you can outside of the case. You don't want to be doing any assembly inside of the case that you don't have to do. And that includes all of the obvious things, right down to like installing your memory onto your motherboard, but also installing fans onto radiators. And this is something that a lot of Spectre 3 customers question us about. Due to the transparency of Spectre 3, it really creates the perception that there's nowhere to hide cables. But you do have the PSU shroud to hide cables, although it is not much. But if you're going to be building a system of this kind of caliber, a Spectre 3 build, you're going to be doing custom cables anyway. And so you have the feature out on the back of the case where all of the custom cables are on display. But how many other cables are there really to hide that are not going to be all around the PSU shroud, which is designed to hide cables? It's easy to hide cables in there. So really it is just the fan cables. And this is something that I've covered a lot in my build logs, but I'm going to be doing a guide just specifically on this coming up soon. I think we did it in some other cable guide at some point, because this is where a lot of people seem to get stuck. I will never build another system where I do not customize fan cables. I'm never going to be calling up fan cables, and I do not recommend it, mainly with how thin the wires are. Like the EK Vada wire strands inside are just so thin. If you bend one of those cables, it's very easy to break those wires. And be careful when you're crimping if you're doing custom cables, because it's really easy to get a bad crimp and not get proper contact. But fan cables need to be customized. If they are, they can be run along the back of the fans and connected up to a hub. We include a hub with Spectre 3, and everything very nice and clean behind the radiators. Looking from around the back, you do have the transparency, and really you can just see the same thing that you can see from the front, except you have some nice straight little wires going along the backs of the fans. But definitely planning on making a guide to show you exactly how that is done. Just installing the rest of the cables here, and what a nightmare that power connector is on the FE. The only bad thing about it, very bad for custom cables. So just starting on the tubing, and I actually did a hardline tube bending guide with this build, so make sure you check out that video. I'll put a link in the video description. But you can see that a Spectre 3 build can be done quite quickly, unless there's customization, of course, which is certainly the biggest thing that slows us down. If everything is stock, one of these builds can be assembled in a very short time. So hopefully I will never have to build another liquid cooled system without pressure testing, but it is not the answer to everything, because when you do get a leak, you still don't know where it is. So it only tells you that you just need to check everything. Back in the old days when the pressure testers first came out and we first started using them, we used to do crazy things like listen with a tube up to our ears, you know, every fitting, but we never really had much success. So yeah, just everything needs to be checked, and this can sometimes mean dismantling a good part of the loop just to find the leak.